Okay, so Brandon writes very fast. Something people always point out. Something we wanted to know though from Brandon was what in his mind is it he looks for in order for a book to be kind of ready for release?
That's an excellent question that's going to be very difficult to answer.
Mm-hmm.
I will say on my speed that I'm not a really fast writer, I'm a consistent writer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take time off. I just write, and I write every day, and that piles up. I think I'm just very fortunate. I have an advantage on a lot of authors in that I don't get writer's block. I don't necessarily write any faster than those authors, but I don't stop. I just keep going. And if you write, 10 pages a day, then, which is about what I do, which is not a ton. A lot of authors produce 10 pages a day when they're writing. Then they hit hang-ups, they hit writer's block and things, and that doesn't happen to me, certainly not very often. And so I just write consistently, and I just love to do this. And so, but that's not an indication of, quality really in either way. One of the things I found becoming a writer is some books go fast, some books go slowly. And the reader can't usually tell because a lot of good quality books happen really fast and a lot of good quality books happen very slowly. If you look at Pat Rothfuss's books, which, Wise Men Fear, took us years to get, and it's a fantastic book, worth every moment of the wait. But, some of the great classics, like Christmas Carol's a famous one, took only a few days to write. And that's happened with various books and classics through history. So we don't really, speed is one thing. What makes a book ready? For me, a lot of whether a book is going to be ready or not comes in, can I fix the problems? Because every book has problems when I write them. I do write I write my drafts beginning to end, pretty quick drafts. And then I need to spend a great deal of time tweaking them, fixing them, going over them again. I write my books much as like a sculptor might create a sculpture. And we start, the first pass over doesn't make it look much like a face. You're just chopping off chunks. And then you refine, and then you refine. And then finally you're sanding just these, get these little tiny imperfections out. And that's how I write. My first pass through is I'm laying down character, dialogue, and plot. I'm not doing description.
Okay.
And in a lot of cases, I'm not doing, for instance, I'm doing a lot of telling rather than showing because I'm getting on the page what needs to happen. Mm-hmm. And then I need to go back and take out huge chunks of, people standing up and monologuing and instead make this actually interesting. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So you get the whole story in the first draft, but it would be boring. Mm-hmm. First draft also often introduces lots of big problems. And when I do my revisions, I need to fix those problems. Primarily, can I get the characters right? Almost every time I write a book, one of the characters, there's something wrong with them. And I need to finish the book before I can figure out what it is that's wrong with them. And the book is ready when I've got them right. At that point, it's a matter of polishing. And the polishing, though it takes time, is easy. No, it's not easy. It's the wrong term. The polishing is expected. It can be done. If I take the right amount of time, I will polish it correctly. But it's those pieces right before that need to be fixed.
So this question I think was quite difficult for Brandon. I hope I didn't cause any kind of offence when I asked it, but I think it's a question that it's a good question because it shows a lot about Brandon, not only as a writer and as kind of a respectful guy that we know he is, but also it shows the feelings and kind of commitment he has to fans as well, which I think was really great. I started by reading my quote, which I'll read to you now. I think the concept of anyone else working on the Wheel of Time series was very painful for Robert Jordan. Just put it in context, he did go on to say that he was eventually happy that someone was continuing his series, so there's no issue there. The question I wanted to ask Brandon was, for any reason, if he couldn't write tomorrow, how would he feel if someone else was to continue his Stormlight series? Is it something he would allow? Is it something he would be happy someone else is doing? What are his thoughts?
Yes. I certainly would.
Okay.
If I were far enough along in it, if it happened tomorrow, we're only one book in. At that point, I say, you know what, scrap the project. Don't make people, I don't have enough notoriety for it to happen. But let's say I got 7 books in and there were 3 books left. At that point, I would say definitely it needs to be finished.
Yeah.
I do keep very good notes. And so basically I would trust my editor to find somebody, and I would want them to work very closely with my assistant Peter, who has known me for many years and is he's the one who knows the most about my books and my worlds, aside from myself. And there are lots of very talented authors. There are plenty of authors who are even more talented, I say even more. They're more talented than I am, certainly. Plenty of authors. And so finding the right one, I would leave that up to editors and people like that. I mean, most people that I would want, that I would pick, are too popular in their own right to want to go write this Dopey guy's books. Like, I think Brent Weeks and I write very similarly, and I think you would be a fantastic choice. But there are plenty of authors out there that I think could do the job if I left the right notes.
Thank you. Again, a great answer there by Brandon. I hope you've enjoyed the interview up to this point. Sadly, we're on to our final question. What we asked Brandon was, as a writer in the fantasy genre, but also a reader, how do you see it developing over the next 20 years?
So how do I see the fantasy market going? Boy, I'm really excited with what's happening in the fantasy genre right now. It feels like we're entering something of a golden age, where we are exploring the genre in new ways. And I always talk about it as, it seems like the generation right after Tolkien was responding to Tolkien, which is appropriate, because Tolkien was so awesome. And Tolkien changed the face of fantasy. And there were a lot of responses and perfecting of this type of story, which I feel personally culminates in The Wheel of Time, which is kind of the majestic, best version of this sort of heroic arc story that was popular in the 70s and 80s. And then 1990, Robert Jordan starts the grand sort of culmination of them all. And after that, it felt like fantasy didn't quite know where to go. Certainly, we had one branch that went the George R. Martin route, which is the new grittiness, which is great. There's a lot of cool things happening there, and that genre, that art, kind of the heroic gritty, is still going strong. David Gemmell was a precursor to that, to what George R. Martin did, and certainly Moorcock and some of these also were doing it in the past. But there's a new wave of this. But epic fantasy didn't seem to know what to do with itself for a little while, now we're recovering, and we have new authors that seem to be approaching it in new ways and expanding. Epic fantasy can have wonderful, inventive worlds that, to the extent that no other genre can do. Science fiction can do great worlds, but we can add added level of the magic upon it to give us this wholly original sort of thing. And hopefully we're seeing more people take more risks in their world building and their narrative structure, like you see in 100,000 Kingdoms or the Patrick Rothfuss books. And the narratives are getting very interesting, and the worlds are getting very interesting. I see in 50 years from now, people looking back and saying, wow, that's where fantasy hit the golden age. And I hope that's the case. I hope we continue to explore and to innovate and to just have fun with this.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening, for watching, I guess, and for reading. And that's it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please visit www.fantasyfaction.com. Tons of news, reviews, interviews, great forum community there, both for readers and writers as well. So if you're into writing, we're happy to give critiques. And also we've got some great writers who do some articles on the website to help with your writing. Hopefully see you over there. Again, www.fantasy-faction.com. Take care, guys.